Hi everyone! I'm Emmy from the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. Thank you so much for joining us today for STEM at Home. We are currently right in the middle of the Maryland STEM Festival, so all kinds of exciting events are going on through our library website and also at the Maryland STEM Festival website, so you can get more information about how to take a look at all of those events right over on our website, PGCMLS.info, or by Googling Maryland STEM Festival. So for today, we have planned a program that focuses on the last two letters of the STEM acronym. So as you might know, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. We're going to look at engineering and math today and how those two fields overlap with the fields of art and design in the form of architecture. So as you might know, architects have to make sure that their designs are planned out and very carefully researched so that when they're engineered to stand up as buildings, they're safe, every measurement is down to very accurate percent, and everything can carefully operate safely together. That's the engineering and math. But it also has to come together with art and design to make something that is beautiful and unique in a building. So that is a unique field that combines the engineering and math together with art and design. We're going to take a look today at how two female architects and designers work together with engineers and mathematicians to make their designs on paper a reality. For our first project today, we're going to make some simple building units out of cardboard and recycled materials that you probably have around your house. And these are building units that are inspired by designer Mary Blair, who was a designer and architect for Disney. Let's take a little bit of a background look at what she does, and then we'll get started building. I will be showing you some images today from the book Pocket Full of Colors by Amy Guglielmo and Jacqueline Tourville. This is published by Anthenium Books for Young Readers, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster. So Mary Blair was an artist and a designer who worked for the Walt Disney Animation Studio in the 1940s. She was one of the few women to take a lead role in the studio at the time. But in addition to drawing and animation, she also designed the famous Disney World ride, It's a Small World. And that was a task that required her to create some art and some drawings and then have it translated into the real world. And she worked together and collaborated with engineers and architects to make her designs on paper a reality. So the engineers building the physical structure of the ride had to make sure that all of their shapes were perfect and their measurements were exact to make a sturdy structure that successfully represented her vision as an artist. As you can see, a lot of Blair's artwork is characterized by strong geometric shapes and bright colors. So when designing, she often put a lot of these squares and rectangles and triangles and other shapes and colors together, and they fit together pretty uniformly. So for us today, what we're going to do is design some building units so that you can make your own Mary Blair inspired structure. We're going to be working with some bright colors, and we'll be working with just some simple shapes of rectangles and squares when we're building, and that will help us kind of take a look at what she designed and make it a reality. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through making a cube-shaped building unit today out of cardboard. A cube is a shape that is made up of equal units, and each of the sides of the cube is a square. So we're going to make a 2-inch cube today. And I'm using some recycled cardboard from my kitchen. You just want to make sure that whatever material that you use, it's thin enough for you to be able to fold it, and also that it has a nice smooth side on the back for us to draw our measurements and our lines. I'm also using a ruler today to help me make sure that my measurements are accurate. And if you remember, we are making a 2-inch cube, so that's going to be made up of a bunch of 2-inch squares. So we're going to start off by just drawing a simple 2-inch line with a pencil. It's always good to use a pencil when you're doing something exact like this, because everybody makes mistakes at some point. We have our 2-inch line at the bottom, and I'm going to draw an 8-inch line that reaches up from there. And we're going to make some little tick marks every 2 inches for the different sides of our cube. So again, I'm drawing 8 inches all the way down so that it meets up with the 2-inch line that I've already drawn. And I'm going to draw a tiny line every 2 inches. So I'm drawing one at the 6, one at the 4, and another tiny line at the 2-inch mark. All right, and so I think I'm going to give you a look at what that looks like here. So there's our 2 inches. I'm going to do the same thing on the other end of our original 2-inch line. So we're going to draw another 8-inch line that stretches all the way up and meets up with the same height as the other line. So again, all the way from 8 inches all the way down to 0. And we're going to make a little tick mark at 8, one at 6, a tick mark at 4, and a tick mark at 2. Okay, so now, the easy part, we can just match up our little tick marks that we've already made, and it should be 2 inches across all the way up. So all we have to do is draw a straight line between those two, a straight line between these two tick marks, another straight line here, and finally, our final 2-inch straight line right at the top. Okay, so that gives us 4 2-inch squares all in a row. When we get ready to fold that, those are all going to be the sides of the cube. Now here, I'm going to draw the top and bottom, so we're going to do that one square up from the bottom of it. And once again, we're doing 2-inch lines, so I need to draw a 2-inch line reaching out this way, and another 2-inch line reaching out this way. And we're going to do the same thing up here at the top of this 2-inch square. So one 2-inch line reaching up, that will eventually be the top of our cube, and one 2-inch line reaching down, that will eventually be the bottom of our cube. And now all you have to do is connect those two sides so that we have a completely closed square. All right, and there we have it. So now we're going to cut out this shape and I'll show you what it looks like. So you can just use any scissors to cut out that shape. It's a T shape that we have here. So once again, let's take a look at this. That right here is going to be the bottom and the top, and these 4 squares along here will be the sides of the cube. So what we're going to want to do to fold that up and make it one unit, I'm going to fold up my sides like this. So you fold up the 2 corners so that they meet each other. And as you can see, we have the rest of our cube unfolded as it's laying out there. And so now, it's helpful when you're doing this to have tape already peeled. So I'm just going to take a piece of tape here just to show you what that looks like. But what we're going to do is, when you're joining them up and holding them together, sometimes it's helpful to have the tape already ready to go so that you don't have to let go and undo that every single time. Here I have 2 sides of my cube standing up to meet each other like that, and we have the rest of the pieces of our cube like this. And so remember, that is the bottom, and these are the 2 sides. So we're folding up another side so that it meets in the corner like this. And I'm getting another piece of tape that I had already ready to go. So now, as you can see, we have our bottom and 3 of our sides, and now all we have to do is fold up this final strip so that it meets up with the other ones. And so I'm folding up my final side of the cube. As you can see, there's one more piece to go to be folded, and we're going to add some tape. Just 1 piece of tape is usually enough at each of the corners, and you can use more if you're having trouble getting it to stay. Okay, and now all we have to do at the end is to fold our top down to meet with the other side that we already had folded. This is the time when our measurements from the earlier step really are put to the test. And the reason for that is, if we didn't make sure that every side of the cube was exactly a 2-inch square, once we got to this final step, it wouldn't meet up with the other sides. I've made a couple of these that didn't quite work out as well as I'd hoped, and they didn't reach all the way to the end, and that was because my lines weren't straight and they weren't exactly 2 inches. Now I am going to walk you through building our other basic building unit, and that one is a rectangle. The only difference between the rectangle and the cube is that the sides of our rectangle are going to be made up of 4-inch by 2-inch rectangles. And then the top and the bottom are going to remain a 2-inch by 2-inch square. I'm starting off here by drawing a 4-inch line that will give you the basic shape of our rectangle side. And so to make this, I'm drawing a 4-inch line, leaving enough space at the top and the bottom so that we can draw those 2-inch squares that will end up as the top and the bottom of our rectangle unit. Since this is a 4-inch by 2-inch rectangle, I'm drawing a 2-inch line that meets up with our 4-inch line at the top and at the bottom. And now all we have to do is close that up by drawing a final 4-inch line. That will connect the two lines that we already have. Here we have one side of our rectangle. Now, exactly the same as how we made the cube, we're going to draw an 8-inch line that will become the other sides of the rectangle, and we're going to draw a tick mark every 2 inches. So this part is essentially the same. We're going to repeat that step on the other side here by drawing another 8-inch line with a tick mark every 2 inches. That will help us line up and connect the dots. Okay, so now all we have to do is draw our 4-inch lines by connecting our tick marks that are coming every 2 inches. That will leave us with a row of 4 2 by 4-inch rectangles. And there we have it. Now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. On the second rectangle from the bottom, we're going to draw some 2 by 2-inch squares. And those we will fold into the top and the bottom of our rectangle unit. So here I'm just drawing a 2-inch line that extends out, and I'm drawing 2 more 2-inch lines that extend out from here. And then what I've done is just made it really close to the edge, but if I hadn't done that, I would draw that line there to close up the shape. And here we have the basic outline of our rectangle unit. So folding up this rectangle unit is going to be pretty similar to making the cube. The only difference is the size of those main units. And so once again, I'm going to score along these lines that we have already drawn, and we'll just fold those up so that they meet each other. So I'm going to fold up this first side of the rectangle and meet it with one of the top or bottom pieces. And again, I have my tape all ready to go so that I don't have to let go of my folded line. It looks like perhaps these aren't as evenly matched as they could be. So for you as the architect of your own rectangles, you want to make sure that you're very carefully drawing the lines and making sure they're exactly the right measurement so that they all meet up with each other and there's no overlapping. Alright, so again, I'm going to continue to fold up the 4-inch by 2-inch sides of the rectangle, folding that one down so that it meets up with the top and the bottom. And we just need one piece of tape for each of these sides. There we go. And last thing, we have the final side of that rectangle folding up to meet the other side. And again, we need probably just one piece of tape for each of those. As you can see, yes, I have a little gap there. It's because I didn't quite do it as neatly as I could. So there we have our rectangle. So because we've made this a 4x2 rectangle, as you can see when I put the cube next to it, the cube is just about half the height. That'll help us a lot when we're building. Okay, so this next part of our project is probably my favorite part. This is where we put our architecture building skills together with our design skills. We're going to decorate our building units. So you can definitely build with them as they are now with just the plain cardboard. But because we're taking our inspiration from Mary Blair, who loved bright colors, I'm going to cover my building units with some paper. So if you do have construction paper around your house or normal printer paper, you can use that to cover and then decorate. So what I did was just measured it along the side of one of my units so that we make sure it's the proper size. And then once you have that size, you can go ahead and fold that a couple times over so that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. So I'm just going to fold this 4 times over so that I am making with the paper 4 different rectangles. So we're creasing that along the same line every single time so that we have 4 rectangles of paper. And when you unfold it, it will perfectly match the shape of your building unit. And it does save you some tape as well because you don't have to tape it at every side. You just put one piece of tape on at the very beginning, and then you can wrap that around like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. All you have to do is trim off that extra piece with scissors. So, as you can see, I am covering my building units with paper. However, if you would prefer to draw directly on the cardboard with some markers or crayons or any kind of drawing implement, you are welcome to do that as well. What I would say is, I would recommend that you draw or decorate your cardboard before you cut it out and fold up the building unit. And that's so that when you are using your tape to attach the sides of your cubes and rectangles, it won't interfere with drawing on it afterwards. You can just make sure that all the designs are on it beforehand, and then you can put the tape on top. It makes it a lot easier. I personally feel like the colored paper or the printer paper gives it a nice clean look all the way around, so that's what I've gone with for my designs. There we go. So we have a rectangle that is wrapped on all the sides, and then if you would like to cover the top and bottom, you can just cut a 2 by 2 square and tape those to either end, or you can leave it as is because it looks okay from the side. So what I've done to cover the square, you can use this wrapping around method, or you can just cover it with a bunch of these 2 by 2 squares if you feel like cutting a lot of those out. We are going to use these 2 by 2 colored paper squares to decorate the outside. So I've propped up our book here to give us some inspiration as far as patterns go. And as you can see, Mary Blair is a big fan of geometric, brightly colored, contrasting colored patterns with all different kinds of shapes. We have triangles, we have squares, we have even more organic shapes like wiggly lines that you can sort of recreate using these squares of paper, or once you've covered the outside of your cube with paper, you can also draw on the outside of the paper if you'd like to do that as well. But I'm going to just show you a few really easy ways to decorate with squares of paper. I'm going to turn that into designs. So starting off, let's take a look at this one. It looks like just a couple of triangles that are facing each other. And so to make that, I have a 2 by 2 inch square. I'm just going to fold that diagonally to make a nice straight line for us to cut across that will give us 2 triangles out of the paper. So I just trimmed that edge a little bit so that they would match up evenly. And we're just going to cut straight along that diagonal line. That'll give us 2 triangles. And because we're using 2 by 2 inch squares, it's going to fit up perfectly with our cube that we have that is also made up perfectly of 2 by 2 inch squares. That's the way geometry works. So if you want, we can just tape that like this to make half of one end, half of the other. Also though, I can fold it diagonally again to make 2 smaller triangles, and that's going to recreate the design that we've seen on the book here. So once we have these 2 even smaller triangles, we can tape them so that they're facing each other just like this, and I just folded up a little piece of tape and used it on the back. So we have 1 triangle on the bottom and another one on the other side. And with this, I'm using blue together with the pink because they're really nice contrasting colors. They stand out really significantly against each other, so that you can see the negative space that the two triangles have left. They're making two other triangles that are facing each other, so that's kind of cool. And then for my rectangle, I think what I want to do is make this design with the 4 little mini squares. So I just folded another 2x2 inch square into fourths, and we can cut along those lines that we've created to make ourselves some mini squares. And then what we can do with those is tape them again diagonally to each other so that it makes this really nice little checkerboard pattern like that. So again, I'm folding up a tiny piece of tape and using that to attach. I think even for some of these colored pieces of paper, I used Post-it notes. If you happen to have that around your house, those are often really nice bright colors that are fun to play with. Or you can also use more recycled paper from other packages, or if you happen to have newspaper, magazines. There's all kinds of interesting options when you're looking around for recycled items to use. So that gives us 2 ideas. I'm also showing you here what it looks like when I did decide to use markers for that. There's all just many different options, and it's really up to you what you feel like you want to create with. And so now that brings us to our construction. I have made a lot of different rectangles and cubes. And so to put them together, to make a structure, you can really arrange them any way that you feel is aesthetically pleasing. Because we're working with similarly sized items, they will stack very nicely with each other, since everything is kind of on a 2-inch or 4-inch measurement. And these are really flexible. They allow you to move them around to any configuration that you want, so that you can make your own fantastical building with all different kinds of colors. So you're welcome to make as many or as few of these as you want, and play around with their arrangement, play around with the colors and the design. How does everything look when it's next to each other? That's what I think is so fun about this style of design. Okay, so we're going to move on now to our second project. We're going to move away from the bright colors and the geometric shapes that inspired Mary Blair and move into a territory of something more organic. We'll look at the work of architect Zaha Hadid. She was a very innovative Iraqi architect who worked a lot with curves, natural colors, and organic inspiration in her buildings, which meant that she had to work pretty closely with her engineers and mathematicians to make sure that her art could become a reality in the form of a sturdy and safe building that was unique and unlike anything that anyone had seen before. We're going to make our own project, again, using recycled materials that you probably have around your house, but this time it's going to be more of a curved shape. Let's learn a little bit about Zaha Hadid and then get building. So I'm going to be showing you some images today from this book. It's The World Is Not a Rectangle, a portrait of architect Zaha Hadid. That's by Jeanette Winter, and it's published by Beach Lane Books, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster. Zaha Hadid was an Iraqi architect, and in contrast with Mary Blair's designs, which are full of straight-edged geometric shapes and bright colors, she really loved designing buildings with muted color palettes and more curved organic shapes like you'd find in nature. So her designs were really innovative and unique, and also very difficult for engineers and builders to figure out, because it was so different from a lot of things that they had seen before. It's much easier to create a sturdy building from straight shapes than it is from curves. So we're going to take inspiration from a couple of her buildings, which you're seeing some gorgeous images of here, by making our own architectural design that features a curved household object, which I'm sure you can guess it's a toilet paper tube. And so all you'll need to do starting from now is start saving toilet paper tubes or paper towel tubes around your house. You'll need some scissors, a pencil, and again a ruler to create this really simple building unit that will help us to make a curved architectural design. So let's go ahead and measure our tube. For me, I'm using a 4-inch toilet paper tube. That's a pretty standard size. And what we're going to do is create some notches that reach roughly 1 inch in from either end of the tube. So I am drawing a line at inch number 1 and inch number 3, and kind of continuing that around the edge of the toilet paper tube so that we can have a guide for cutting in 1 inch notches. So you can kind of tilt that tube every couple of inches or so, just draw another little notch that will help us to create that measurement. And then what we're going to do is make a short incision from that 1 inch line all the way down to the bottom. And then a really, really short ways away, we're going to make another one so that it makes a tiny little strip like this, and you can just cut it off at the end. So I have a 1 inch long notch here. And so then we're going to go ahead and make 3 more of those around the base of our toilet paper tube. So I'm going to make another 1 inch notch right here and snip that off at the end. And then another one roughly halfway across the tube from our original notch. And then we can remove that little piece again. And then our final notch is going to be halfway across the tube from this one. So right there directly up from it. So that when you're done, you have 4 notches that are pretty much equally spaced and across from each other, all the way around the edge of our tube. We're going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. So we're just going to measure up to make sure that they're equally aligned with each other, and make another tiny notch right here, so that you have one on the top and one at the bottom. Each of them are 1 inch. We're going to make another one directly downwards from this one, and just continue it around the tube until you have all 4, for a total of 8 notches, evenly spaced, each of them 1 inch in length. And that we're going to want to repeat on as many toilet paper tubes as you would like. What I have done here is just made a couple of them, and I'm going to show you how we put this together. Since they all have notches that match up with each other and they're each the same length, they're each 1 inch, they are going to be able to slide into one another, and you can use that to create all sorts of sturdy designs. They'll be able to fit together with any other of your units as long as you've made sure to measure them consistently. They should all fit together with each other, and you can make as many of them as you would like. Because we're taking inspiration from Zaha Hadid, I'm going to play around a little bit with different ideas of symmetry when I'm doing my design here. So you can, as you can see, we can kind of make a more angular shape, and this matches up a little bit with some of her buildings that we saw earlier. And I'm going to see if I can do this by balancing. An important element in architecture and engineering is making sure that you can translate the artist's image into an actual sturdy, safe design. So what I've done here, this is a little bit of a more symmetrical design idea that goes up and down like a pyramid. We're going to see if we can make something a little more asymmetrical, and that means it's not going to be so evenly balanced, but hopefully we're going to make it so that it still is sturdy and it won't collapse and it won't fall in on itself. Another thing that you may notice between my designs here and then the earlier Mary Blair designs are that I'm leaving these with their natural just cardboard tones, and that's again to follow Zaha Hadid's more organic, natural color preferences in the buildings that she designs. You are welcome, if you wish, as a designer, to decorate your toilet paper tube building units. If you decide that you want to do that, you can make that choice. However, I'm leaving mine natural so that they follow. So here's something that I did make a little bit earlier that's a little more asymmetrical and a little more angular. So as you can see, the difference between the two that I have here, one of them is kind of following the path of a diagonal line moving upwards, and it's less balanced. Here's our little pyramid shape that does go up and down, and it is more symmetrical and perfectly balanced. But see if you can experiment with moving your units around in different ways. See how you can balance them. And that brings us to the end of our program. Thank you again so much for joining us today for this STEM at Home program and also for the entire Maryland STEM Festival. That's going on now all the way through November 1st, so be sure to check back at our library website for more programs that are going on. We always have STEM at Home every Friday at 12 o'clock p.m., so even after the STEM Festival is over, you can still find lots of exciting science, technology, engineering, and math going on over there. Both of the books that I showed some images from throughout this program today are available on our library website if you're interested in checking those out and reading a little bit more about our architects and designers. And always, as always, don't be afraid to continue to experiment and try things out at home. Both of the activities that I planned today are made just of simple recyclable materials that I have around the house, and they're not limited to what I showed you today. So don't be afraid to experiment and continue building and try out new things. That's what science is all about. So thank you, and hope to see you again soon.